than punk protest. David Bowden, Sky News.
We go live to Moscow now and speak to the Russian media tycoon Alexander Lebedev. Very good afternoon to you. How is this story being covered there?
Good afternoon. I beg your pardon?
How is this story being covered there in Moscow?
Well, depends on whether it's covered by the state-controlled media, which is either keeping silence or being on the side of the government. If you look at the Echo Moskvy or Novaya Gazeta or Vedomosti, which is a tiny, I'm afraid, coverage of the free media, then we are giving opinion to everyone. Clearly, the society here is split. Well, our position in Novaya Gazeta is pretty simple. I mean, this is political. We're wondering whether it to be happening in Britain, there'll be any attention paid to any of those at all. And clearly, that has been sanctions from above. And since we don't have an independent court or an independent law enforcement agencies, then this is a kind of a crash against political dissent. In fact, I was in court tonight, and the parallel which occurred to me that you can compare the trial against the girls from the Pussy Rights group to any of the trials against political dissidents in the end of 60s or in the 70s. I was a youngster, but there's a lot of literature about it, and I think anything else is irrelevant. I think it's a political dissent against Putin, and this is why the state is overreacting. I think it was not America incidents that tonight they were supposed to press charges against Navalny. They moved it to tomorrow, maybe to avoid the parallels which I'm making with the very important period in the Soviet history when they claimed that Brezhnev was opposing to Andropov actually going against the dissent. And in one of the Politburo meetings, Brezhnev turned out to be somewhere in the Crimea, and Andropov pushed through the Politburo decision to put in jail the first 100 of political dissidents, which started from Mordovia labor camps. I can only hope that these parallels, which occurred to me, are irrelevant, and the Russia will still be moving more towards a European democracy than to something resembling even remotely the Soviet times.
There have, of course, been a lot of protests in the country, particularly this year with Vladimir Putin's re-election as president. Are this group and their treatment an exception of protest movements, or is this generally how they're being treated?
Well, I mean, if you look attentively at what has been happening to those people who are treated by the state as being leaders of the opposition, I have my doubts, because I don't see an opposition as an institution. It has not been able to form a kind of a solidarity in Poland in the 70s. Once that is formed, then maybe the government might listen. But if you look separately at Sobchak or Ryzhkov or Nemtsov or Yashin or anybody of these girls, then there's a lot of pressure has been put against them in the recent, say, here in various forms, and I wouldn't have any doubts that inside the law enforcement agencies, say inside FSB, there is even a body formed which resembles straightforwardly the very famous, notoriously fifth chief directorate in the KGB of the USSR, which was handling dissent in the country. It was the same, using the same methods, which is threats, falsification of criminal cases, which has nothing to do with reality or the criminal code. I mean, blackmail, going against the businesses like in the Gennady Gudkov case, which is a quite well-known member of parliament, or using all sorts of other harassments. Unfortunately, I would have my doubts about Putin being, say, 100% aware of all of that, but we all know that in the 37 or 38, Stalin, who was responsible for everything happening in the country, was fully aware of everything which was happening, he claimed later on to be happening behind his back. So, since the system is being carried on here, I mean, without real political institutions, we have no independent judiciary, we have no independent parliament, we have no independent media, we have no proper electorate system, then I'm afraid that the full responsibility for everything of this sort has to be accepted by the president of the country. So I can only be pinning my hope on him turning the country in the right way rather than in the wrong one.
OK, Alexander Lebedev, thanks very much for joining us live from Moscow with your thoughts on this ongoing trial.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Syria's most senior